Welcome to Battleforge Legends, where we explore the battles that shaped history. Today, we'll dive deep into the 1944 Peleliu campaign, one of the bloodiest and most controversial battles of World War II in the Pacific. With over 36,000 American troops facing Japan's elite 14th Division on a tiny coral island, this battle turned into a 70-day nightmare costing over 20,000 lives. Was Peleliu truly necessary or just a strategic mistake? Let's analyze it from the context, tactics, to the bloody consequences. Like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on top-tier history stories. Now let's delve into the context of the Peleliu campaign, part of America's grand strategy in the Pacific in 1944. After breaching Japan's absolute defense line through brutal battles at Tarawa, Kwajalein, and Eniwetok, U.S. forces under Admiral Chester Nimitz had pushed deep into the Central Pacific. The Mariana Campaign from June to August 1944 defeated the Japanese fleet in the Philippine Sea, capturing Saipan, Tinian, and Guam, paving the way for B-29 bombers to strike Japan directly. Meanwhile, General Douglas MacArthur from the south advanced through the Solomon Islands and New Guinea, isolating the Japanese base at Rabaul with over 100,000 troops trapped. MacArthur's next goal was to liberate the Philippines, but the eastern flank needed securing to prevent counterattacks from the Palau Islands, where Japan could use them as a springboard for airstrikes on supply lines. Operation Stalemate II was assigned to the 3 Amphibious Corps, including the 1st Marine Division, about 36,000 troops, 40% replacements, and the 81st Infantry Division in reserve. Initially, the plan covered all of Palau, but delays in the Marianas narrowed it to Peleliu, Angaur, and Yap. Planning time was limited, with a lack of experience on coral terrain and vague intelligence leading to underestimating Japanese resistance. Admiral William Halsey, after reconnaissance on September 12th, proposed canceling Stalemate II and Morotai, focusing directly on the Philippines, since Japanese forces at Mindanao were weak. He argued that carrier airstrikes could neutralize Palau without landings, saving lives and time. MacArthur agreed to cancel Morotai, but Nimitz insisted on keeping Palau for its safe anchorage. And because forces were already en route with 868 ships involved, including 129 attack transports, Major General William Rupertus, commander of the 1st Marine Division, confidently declared that capturing Peleliu would take only 4 to 5 days, an optimistic prediction based on previous battles. However, Peleliu's terrain, a 10 kilometers long coral island with the rugged Umurbrogol mountains, would turn it into a nightmare. The campaign aimed to secure MacArthur's flank, but it was later criticized as unnecessary as the Philippines were liberated without needing Peleliu's airfield. 2. Japanese preparations. With the Pacific situation increasingly unfavorable, Japan anticipated U.S. attacks on central islands to support larger campaigns. The Palau Islands, about 500 miles from the Philippines, became a strategic target. Japan concentrated defenses there, sending the elite 14th Division, a battle-hardened unit from Manchuria, China, to Peleliu and Angaur. This core force of about 10,000 troops underwent rigorous training and had real combat experience. Most Japanese troops were stationed on Babeldaub, Palau's largest island, but Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, commander on Peleliu, was ordered to turn the island into an impregnable fortress. Japan's tactics at Peleliu marked a major shift from previous battles like Tarawa or Saipan. Instead of direct resistance on the beaches, where they were often annihilated by U.S. naval bombardment, Nakagawa adopted a deep defense strategy. Japanese troops withdrew into the interior terrain, leveraging natural cave systems and the jagged coral ridges of Umurbrogol to build a network of reinforced concrete bunkers, steel, casemates, and sniper positions. These fortifications were camouflaged under dense vegetation, making them hard for U.S. intelligence to detect. At the point, a promontory near the landing beaches, Japan positioned anti-tank guns and machine guns to create kill zones, combined with underwater mines, barbed wire, and obstacles to slow American LVT landing vehicles. The new Japanese operational manual emphasized endurance and force conservation. Troops were ordered to exploit rainy weather smoke from forest fires and rugged terrain to evade airstrikes. They avoided suicidal banzai charges, a tactic that had failed disastrously against U.S. firepower, and instead focused on prolonged defense, maximizing enemy losses through sniping ambushes and selective counterattacks. Civilians, including native Palawans and forced laborers from Korea or Okinawa, were evacuated from the island to avoid hindering combat. Nakagawa trained his men to view Peleliu as the Americans' graveyard, aiming to turn the battle into a war of attrition, forcing the U.S. to pay dearly for every inch of ground. This tactic not only aimed to defend Palau, but also to slow the American advance, buying time for Japan to fortify defenses in the Philippines. With forces ready, the pre-invasion bombardment began from September 12 to 14. The U.S. fleet, including battleships and carrier aircraft, unleashed continuous bombs and shelling on Peleliu, claiming to have destroyed most military targets. However, this was a major intelligence failure. The U.S. lacked detailed maps and didn't realize the Japanese fortifications were perfectly camouflaged under thick vegetation, causing most bombs to miss. Many bunkers and caves remained intact, ready to receive the landing forces. This turned Rupertus's promise of capturing the island in 4 days into an illusion. On D-Day, September 15th, the 1st Marine Division began landing on white 1-2 and orange 1-3 beaches near the main airfield, a key strategic objective. LVT landing vehicles carrying troops and Sherman tanks charged the beaches under fierce fire. Japan used machine guns, anti-tank guns, and underwater mines to turn the sands into a slaughterhouse. Only one of 18 Sherman tanks survived the first day, with many burned out right on the shore. Resistance was especially strong at White 1 and the Point, a promontory with ideal crossfire positions. K Company of the 1st Marine Regiment captured the Point after fierce fighting, but was isolated, suffering heavy casualties as Japan counterattacked from nearby bunkers. That evening on D-Day, Japan launched a major counterattack. About 500 infantry, supported by 13 light Hago tanks, surged from the jungle, aiming for the airfield. This was Nakagawa's last-ditch effort to push the Americans back into the sea. However, the 5th Marine Regiment, with bazookas and anti-tank guns, destroyed most of the tanks and infantry in a chaotic night battle under flare light. Eugene Sledge later recalled the bloody scene, with burning tank hulks and Japanese bodies strewn everywhere. The first day's results were a disaster for the U.S. Though ashore, the Marines failed to expand the beachhead, with 100 casualties, including 200 dead, the highest rate in Marine landing history. Chaos worsened due to pre-dug anti-tank ditches, swamps swallowing vehicles, and contaminated water, causing widespread dysentery. Temperatures of 38 degrees Celsius exhausted the troops, with many collapsing before engaging the enemy. This first day signaled that Peleliu was not a quick battle, but a prolonged hell. IV. Advance in Stalemate. After the bloody landing day, U.S. Marines pressed on D+1 toward the main airfield, a critical objective for broader operations. Regiments had to cross open fields where the flat terrain made them easy targets for Japanese fire from hidden bunkers. Eugene Sledge, a Marine who later wrote memoirs, described the scene like World War I trenches, Americans charging under machine gun and artillery fire with comrades' bodies littering the mud. Japan used precise sniping from caves, making every advance cost lives. Still with naval gunfire and air support, the airfield was finally captured by afternoon D+1, but at a steep price, hundreds of casualties and many units exhausted before the real fight began. Pushing deeper into the Umurbrogol Mountains, the jagged coral ridges U.S. troops called Bloody Nose Ridge became the true nightmare. The razor-sharp terrain prevented digging foxholes, forcing Americans to lie exposed under 38-degree heat and Japanese fire. Japanese troops hid in natural caves and concrete bunkers, firing from embrasures, making direct assaults suicidal. The 1st Marine Regiment suffered the heaviest losses, losing a third of its strength in days. They had to use support personnel, originally for logistics, as frontline riflemen, leading to chaos and reduced effectiveness. Every small hill like Five Sisters or Horseshoe was a death trap, with Marines climbing slopes under gunfire only to be repelled by Japanese grenades and machine guns. On Angkor, a smaller island near Peleliu, the 81st Infantry Division faced lighter but still fierce resistance. Japan used similar bunker tactics, hiding in coral terrain for sniping and ambushes. Though captured faster, the 81st still lost 260 killed, while only 59 of 1,400 Japanese survived, most by suicide or dying in bunkers. Major General Rupertus, commanding the Marines, refused to let the 81st replace his forces, partly due to rivalry between the Marines and the Army. He insisted the Marines could handle it themselves, leading to exhaustion. By D+6, Marine casualties reached 56%, with the 1st Regiment at 71%. Horrific numbers that left many units combat ineffective. Faced with stalemate at Umurbrogol, U.S. forces shifted to siege tactics to minimize lives lost. Instead of direct assaults, they used massive ammunition, including naval guns, bombers, and new weapons like flamethrowers, napalm, and thermite grenades. Bulldozers cleared paths, opening routes for troops into Japanese positions. However, attacks on hotspots like Five Sisters and Horseshoe repeatedly failed. Japanese in fortified caves sniped and threw grenades from narrow slits, making every U.S. advance bloody. American morale plummeted with exhaustion from heat, lack of clean water, and psychological strain from an invisible enemy. By D+32, the 81st Infantry Division was deployed to relieve the 1st Marine Division, which had 56% casualties and was nearly combat incapable. With fresh troops, the 81st applied similar siege tactics, but more effectively, using napalm and rockets to burn out Japanese bunkers. Coordinated assaults gradually shrank Japanese-held areas, but progress was slow due to terrain and fanatical resistance. Colonel Kunio Nakagawa realized defeat was inevitable. He requested permission from Tokyo for a suicidal banzai attack, but it was denied as outdated. On D+70, Nakagawa and Major General Kenjiro Murai sent their final signal, "Sakura, Sakura," before committing ritual suicide with their last 56 troops in a desperate infiltration attempt. The Peleliu campaign officially ended on November 27, 1944, though some Japanese held out in caves until 1954. Total casualties were catastrophic. The U.S. lost about 10,500, 2,000 killed Japan, nearly 10,000 killed, with only 360 prisoners, mostly forced laborers from Korea and Okinawa. Peleliu was harshly criticized for its vague strategic value. Angkor's airfield provided little support for the Philippines campaign, which succeeded without Peleliu. U.S. carrier strikes in 1944 had already isolated Peleliu, making Admiral Halsey's bypass proposal likely correct. However, the battle helped the U.S. understand Japan's deep defense tactics applied later at Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Major General Rupertus was relieved and effectively demoted for poor leadership, and Nimitz was criticized for stubbornness. Additionally, the campaign destroyed Peleliu's cultural heritage, leaving long-term scars on the native population. The 1944 Peleliu campaign was a tragic chapter in World War II, where the bravery of U.S. Marines clashed with Japan's tenacious tactics. From the bloody D-Day landing to the stalemate at Bloody Nose Ridge, this battle exposed the horrific cost of war and flawed strategic decisions. With over 20,000 casualties, Peleliu was criticized as unnecessary, as Angkor's airfield didn't significantly aid the Philippines. However, it taught the U.S. how to counter Japan's deep defenses applied at Iwo Jima and Okinawa later. Thanks to historians Patreon and Nebula, where you can explore more series like Iwo Jima or Okinawa 1945. If you're passionate about military history, share and subscribe to Battleforge Legends. Turn on notifications for new videos. Comment below on the next battle you want us to cover: Iwo Jima, Okinawa, or another theater. See you in the next video, where we continue uncovering heroic history. If you love military history, share and subscribe to Battleforge Legends. Turn on notifications for new videos. Comment below on the next battle you want us to cover: Stalingrad, Dunkirk, or another theater. See you in the next video, where we continue uncovering heroic history.